Kalani Sitake left BYU, then stayed at BYU, this is the story of a cookie CEO who saved the day. And this is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. If you are a Cincinnati fan, Texas Tech fan, Houston fan, you're like, why would I care about this? Dog, I'm about to tell you the story of the wildest 6 hours from all the sources that I heard from, all the people that I talked to, the wildest 6 hours in college coaching search history. Also, this is a full show of Locked On Big 12, so only the first 8 to 10 minutes will be just that. Then TJ Pittenger hops in, and we talk about the Big 12 championship, BYU and Texas Tech, which will be the focus of the rest of the week. And we'll spend the rest of the show talking about BYU, Texas Tech, all of that. But dog, this is, bar none, the weirdest coaching search in Big 12 history, and BYU just got here. The Cookie Man saved the day. Yesterday, I did a video from Kalshi, right? How they had the #1 odds for Kalani Sitake. And when I'm recording this right now, I fully believe he's going to be the head coach of BYU this weekend and next season. Anything can happen. Anything can change, but I think that's what we're headed for. I can explain why. But I did a video about Kalshi named him #1, and this is stupid. He's not going to leave. Then midnight fell. The light went dim. Kalani Sitake is gone. We're getting reports from Barstool that it is a done deal. The tweet comes from Liam Blutman. Barring a miracle, Kalani Sitake, which, by the way, you're working with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints here, bud. Miracle is pretty much, that's like the word. So, yeah, that doesn't mean that's not going to happen, because it usually does. Barring a miracle, Kalani Sitake will be the Penn State head coach. As I mentioned last night, an announcement will come soon. The original plan was for an announcement to be made after the Big 12 championship, whether BYU won or lost. As reported by others, BYU held an emergency team meeting today. The process has been expedited. So it goes from, oh, funny blonde hair, Drake Toll guy talking about Kalshi, to, oh, they're having a team meeting. And I don't know this because I'm not Kalani Sitake, and he's the only one that could. But everything that I've heard, that team meeting was scheduled for the head coach of the BYU Cougars to tell the team he was no longer going to be the head coach. And I don't blame him whatsoever. I've heard a lot of what's happened behind the scenes, from underpaid staff to, hey, a brand new athletic director just trying to find the right fit within that athletic department. I don't blame either side. But it's like, yeah, I mean, he's stepping up and taking a Penn State job. Congratulations. And at some point during the day yesterday, a brave BYU fan, Cougs in 5, says, if Kalani Sitake goes to Penn State, I'll shove a 5-layer burrito up my ass. That's 11:58 a.m. At 11:58, his arse, his sphincter, his backside seemed real safe. Come about 5 p.m. Eastern time, 4 p.m. Central time, pucker up, baby. You best get ready for that. You better get that 5-layer burrito in the freezer, because it's coming. And that's when the team meeting is scheduled. And it's hilarious to me to think that everyone's arguing so much about whether or not Kalani Sitake is going to stay at BYU, and the donors are trying to get him on board. Nobody can figure it out. The athletic department's like, I don't know, we can match the number Penn State's giving. That number, some reports say $11 million. They're like, I don't know about the NIL and the staff, and that's so much money. What if we just, if we did move on, what would it cost to move on? Could somebody else win? Could Jay Hill win? Could A-Rod win? Could anybody in college, Andy Reid, could they win? And then the greatest tweet in college coaching search history. We got a man with his entire manhood on the line, ready to shove a madness of Taco Bell within himself, when the CEO of Crumbl Cookies comes to the rescue. He tweets out, 6:01 Eastern time, some people are not replaceable. Sounds like it is time for me to get off the sidelines and get to work. He's got this Batman thing going on. That's how I envision him, Batman. The idea that the Cookie Man cracks his knuckles in the middle of the day and says, he's not going anywhere. Give that man to me. Oh my. All hell broke loose. This is crazy. Penn State Talk tweets. The search went from Penn State is looking for a new head coach to Penn State is battling the entire Mormon church in an attempt to acquire their new head coach. This is insane. I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone. Whiteout football says 50 days. The administration of Penn State has an opportunity to find a new coach somewhere. And all they want to do, their solution, convince a Mormon to leave Provo, Utah? What? Oh, yeah. Welcome to the show, bud. You best bet when you come for the BYU Mafia, you're not gonna live to see the end of the day. They're gonna love you to death. Brady Clark, the year is 2025, and Penn State is fighting with the CEO of Crumbl Cookies over Kalani Sitake. College sports. You had barbecue, and you didn't invite me. This is where I'll end it here. Unbelievable. Liam Blutman, who just had a blender of a day. Who had a blender? He's like, he's coming. He's going. Snip, snap, snip, snap. Sorry, I'm just a bad reporter. Says, again, Penn State's plan was originally to announce Sitake on Saturday after the championship. The offer I heard was $11.5 million, 6 years. BYU's actively tried to make this happen since Sitake agreed to terms with Penn State. This has gone past BYU's AD. They are trying everything to keep Sitake in Provo. This is insane, and all happening the week of a massive game. BYU could clinch a playoff berth. He says, BYU's emergency team meeting was canceled. As Sitake has spent time today visiting with prominent members of BYU's football family that include the widow of Lavelle Edwards. They pulled out all the stops. BYU has gone to the church to ask for more money. BYU is trying hard to make this miracle happen. He has to go back and use the word miracle again because he said miracle earlier. And lo and behold, the widow of a legendary football coach combines with the cookie man. Combines with the man who owns Qualtrics. And I can't tell you what they do, but I know it makes a lot of money. They all met in a room and they said, Brian Santiago, athletic director of BYU, be gone. It is up to us, the money. And the idea that they called a team meeting to tell the children that the head coach is gone. And that team meeting very well could have turned into Kalani walking in and going, so I called you all here to say good luck this weekend. All right, bye. Is incredible. Snip, snap, snip, snap. You have no idea the physical toll 5 coaching search vasectomies have on a person. It's still not over, but for 6 hours, the BYU football players couldn't focus on the Big 12 championship. They could only focus on the man who loves BYU so much coming back to BYU. And in the end, justice prevails. I am in awe of you, BYU. I am in awe of this entire situation. And I do believe somehow, some way, this helps the Cougars this weekend. You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself threaten to leave as the hero and then come back the hero. It is college football. And it's a beautiful day to cover the sport in this conference. Chills. Coming up, BYU is going to win. But Texas Tech's going to win. I can prove the case for both. This is Locked On Big 12. Today's show is brought to you by Omaha Steaks. Look, I said it once, I'll say it again. If you want Kalani Sitake to stay at BYU, you're ordering him an Omaha steak and sending it right to the BYU front office saying, please, Kalani, stay. If you're a big fan of what Joey McGuire and the Campbell family have done at Texas Tech, you're probably sending them an Omaha steak. And their cyber sale is here, making your deals huge. I give Omaha steaks almost every year as a gift to my dad. He loves cooked steak. He's not great at it, but he does it. and he loves to cook it. In Omaha, actually, the quality of the meat's so good, it helps the steak taste better. Incredibly tender steaks, rich flavor, and meals that make hosting or weeknight cooking easier. Burgers, comfort meals, sides, desserts, they have all of that too. Save big with unforgettable gifts and Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide, extra 20% off select favorites during their cyber sale, and an additional $35 off. Use promo code COLLEGE at checkout. It's a whole lot of savings. omahasteaks.com, promo code COLLEGE, all caps COLLEGE. Terms apply. See site for details at Omaha Steaks.
And Drake, we did this for the BYU Texas Tech game earlier in the year, and we're going to do it again. BYU preview for the Big 12 championship. Has to feel good to get there. Now, I know they're a big dog, and I know that nobody believes in them. Shocker on that, right? Like they've been doubted for 2 years at this point. Yeah. But it does have to feel good to get there because they had it in their sights last year, and really just the way the end of the year went down, just kind of blew it late. Now had a nice bowl win, but have rebounded really well this year. And one loss to a top 5-6 team in the country, otherwise taking care of business. It has to be a good moment just to be there. Now, I know they're not happy just being there, but if we take a step back before we get to the game, it is nice that they made it to the Big 12 championship.
I believe in BYU. Hello. Hi.
I was going to say, we believe. We've believed for 2 years.
Yeah, you can say nobody has believed in BYU. We've believed in BYU and the Cougars. And yeah, there was an empty feeling this time last year, this very weekend. BYU looking at Iowa State and Arizona State and saying, what if we're better than both those schools if we played Arizona State again? What if we're better than Iowa State? And yet we have to sit at home and watch this game because we just didn't win. When we had Kansas at home, we couldn't win. And so the empty feeling of being far better, Cincinnati's going through that right now, of being far better than you were expected to be, and then just not meeting the brand new expectation you brought upon yourself, that's an empty feeling. BYU doesn't have that this year. They did it. Even without their starting quarterback, they found a better starting quarterback, and now they're in the Big 12 title game.
So in this game, we didn't really do a recap from the BYU Texas Tech game. We didn't really talk. We do a lot of preview stuff. And then by the time the recap would come out, most people are moved on to the next week. What specifically went wrong for BYU in that game that this is a good point, two-parter. What can be fixed and what do you just have to kind of live with? Like what cannot necessarily be, like Texas Tech is going to do some things well. So like what's the optimist approach and what is the pessimist of like, dude, you got to pick your poison. Texas Tech is going to beat you in these areas, but here's what you can get better at.
Yeah, so here's where I think BYU is actually going to win this game. And I'll make the same case of how Texas Tech can win. I think BYU has an edge in a couple of areas that people didn't talk about after they played that game in Lubbock. If we look at the way the offenses broke down, Tech had to kick 5 field goals because BYU's red zone defense was so good. Now, granted, you could say, well, Texas Tech's offense in the red zone's not that good either. Yeah, well, you're just giving me further proof that once we get to the Big 12 title game, BYU has an edge when Texas Tech gets inside the 20-yard line. That said, I'm looking at this. It's not like Texas Tech had 450 yards of offense. It's not like they had 28 first downs. 17 first downs for the Red Raiders, 14 for BYU. The big tell here, in a 3-score game, 22-point game, BYU turned the ball over 3 times. And it wasn't like Bear Bachmeier completely choked the game away and was throwing interceptions all over the field. 3 turnovers, 2 of them were fumbles, 1 interception. 1 was an early muffed punt, and it felt like BYU couldn't quite recover after that. You'll have to keep in mind as well, this game was 13-0 at halftime. Like it was pretty much every step of the way pretty reasonable for BYU to be 1 score away from making it at least interesting. Now, that is not to give any excuse. This is for the Texas Tech fans listening. I'm not saying Texas Tech should have lost this game or that this is a cheap win against BYU. This is just how the Cougars can still build confidence coming into this one. And here are the numbers, further numbers, that make people believe that. Bear Bachmeier, 188 pass yards in that first game. That's fairly standard for Bear Bachmeier. That's pretty much what his average is this season, about 188 yards. If he does that, BYU wins the game most of the time. 67 rush yards is where the issue was. BYU has to be able to establish the run. I think they'll do so more creatively with Parker Kingston, Chase Roberts, Nawahine, Bear Bachmeier, and not just giving the rock to LJ Martin, which they did with no success against Texas Tech. Those 3 turnovers, their 5 penalties. If you clean those 2 things up, there's a shot for BYU. And I really do think the Cougars, because of their defense, 1 for 3 on 4th down in that game as well. A couple of those go a different way. This game has a different score. The Cougars' defense is what's going to keep them in it. Tech had 0 turnovers the first time around. If they have 1 or 2 here in Arlington, and I expect them to, that's where this gets truly into BYU's favor.
Is there a specific matchup in this game that you look at that you really thought BYU, I mean, you talk about passing yards and they got to run the ball better, this, that, and the other. What about defensively on the BYU side? Is there something that they did well, either defending, a certain weapon or just the way they got after the quarterback or didn't get after the, is there a matchup that you look at specifically in this?
Yeah, people forget Baron Morton was sacked 4 times. BYU had 4 sacks in the game against Texas Tech. They got pressure on the quarterback, and the Tech offense never really looked comfortable. Morton was 17 for 32, a 56 QBR. He didn't have an elite game throwing the football. Cameron Dickey was the difference in this game, as well as Jacoby Williams. And if you really want to boil it down, and again, I don't want to dilute what Texas Tech did. They're a dominant team. I think they'll win multiple games in the college football playoff. But Dickey had a 33-yard run, and Jacoby Williams had a 43-yard run. So out of Tech's 149 yards running the football, half of that came on 2 carries. There are 2 plays that you omit from this game, and all of a sudden it looks a whole lot different. And those that big rush play, specifically the big rush play for Cameron Dickey, had a big touchdown in the second half, is what ultimately put the game away. I think defensively BYU is fine. They only allowed 2 touchdowns against Texas Tech and continued, due to turnovers, to set the Red Raiders up in plus territory. Because of that, Texas Tech had offense on a silver spoon and still couldn't get the ball efficiently into the end zone. The BYU defense needs to make little to no adjustment. I thought Jay Hill did a really good job against Tech. And look, if we're going to point to one area where BYU is going to struggle, it's the offense, because Texas Tech's defense is that good. But if I think about, exploitation of a matchup here or there, the linebackers, Jack Kelly, Isaiah Glasker, and even going into the D-line of Keanu Tanavasa, those are guys that got penetration against Texas Tech in the first matchup between these 2 teams. We saw sacks from Isaiah Glasker. We saw 2 sacks from Jack Kelly in that game. We saw one from Siali Sarah, and that's where if Sarah or Tanavasa, Kelly to Glasker are as good as they have been or as good as they were in that game, BYU can step up and be really solid.
Big picture, I know Texas Tech fans maybe don't want to hear this, maybe Utah as well, but big picture, it'd be best for the league if BYU won this, and there's really no question about it, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're Brett Yormark, you're rooting for BYU, and that's bar none. There is zero opportunity, I think, right now, the way that we look at this, to get BYU into the college football playoff as an at-large. As tough as that is to hear, as tough as it is to say, there's no level of campaigning that seems to work. An 11-1 Power 4 team is being held out of the college football playoff, no matter how much of an injustice that is. And so if you're the conference, you want 2 playoff teams. If you're the conference, what you really would love to see is, let's say BYU does beat Texas Tech. Tech gets dropped to the 8th spot. They fall from 4th to 8th. I mean, you can't really punish them that much. They lost their conference title game, and then BYU just beat Tech, so you move BYU into that 7th spot. And now they both have home games in the postseason. That's your dream scenario for the Big 12 Conference. And I think if BYU beats Texas Tech, it could be exactly what you get. Because again, there's not a world here where BYU beats Texas Tech and you put BYU behind Texas Tech by 3 or 4 spots. Like, that just wouldn't make any sense. It didn't do it last year. Remember, Clemson still got to jump SMU when it came to the college football playoff because they just had the head-to-head win against the Mustangs. That's what I think we're going to see here if BYU wins. The Cougars will get a home football game. Texas Tech likely gets a home football game. That'd be an interesting thing to consider, and hopefully that is the case for the Big 12 Conference. It's at least what Brett Yormark wants, and the host of Locked On Big 12 probably also wants.
I would like to see BYU there too. I'll say that. I think they'd be a very entertaining watch. I think that, just even in some of the results, right? Like, you look at that UCF game and they're down 14-0 and they go on a 30-0 run. You're just like, well, cute, for the 5 or 10 minutes that it lasted. There is just something about this BYU team. I think they kind of revel in the underdog role. I don't know if that's enough for me to outright pick them in this, because I do have a lot of respect for Texas Tech, but I do think that they will play up that underdog role. And I think they thrive in that. People have doubted them, like we said at the beginning, for 2 years. And so I expect them to come out and play better. I think this, I'll tell you, I was in Atlanta, Georgia, when this game was happening at noon, and I was waiting for the game to finish to drive to Clemson to watch FSU play. And I almost regretted sticking around because the game just wasn't largely competitive. I think we'll get a much better game here. I do think not being in Lubbock, I think not being on the road will help BYU. I think they'll play a little bit sharper offensively, though that is tough against this defense, and I think we'll get a better game. I think they cover the spread. It's Monday when we're doing this, so I'm not sure that I'm ready to make a pick just yet, but I will put the hot seat on you. Where you leaning here?
Yeah, I think that BYU defensively, they're 2 turnovers away from a very different game in Lubbock and on a neutral site where this will be 55-45 BYU fans, 50-50 BYU and Texas Tech. And you can argue that most of the Texas Tech alum live in Dallas. Yeah, a lot of LDS members, a lot of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and BYU alum live in Dallas as well, and they're all going to pack the stadium. I think it's a great thing for the Big 12 Conference that these 2 teams are going to play for the Big 12 championship from an exposure standpoint. Here are the numbers. BYU's defense, number 28 against the pass. Texas Tech, number 53 throwing the football, efficiency-wise. From an efficiency standpoint, BYU, number 55. Efficiency-wise against the run, Texas Tech, number 107. You look at the way that Texas Tech's run the football this year, and it's a lot of big plays and spurts. If BYU can turn over Texas Tech twice, if BYU can limit the large runs, and again, it's a big if, but if they do that, the Cougars can win this game. And TJ, I think right now BYU certainly covers. I'm not ready to say they're going to win this game, but I think BYU has a much stronger edge than a lot of people expect. I've watched every game in the Big 12 in football this year, every Texas Tech, every BYU game. And I think the Cougars have a much better shot than the 13.5 point underdog line that they're being given right now. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is where I'm going for the Big 12 championship this weekend. Texas Tech and BYU, and the deals are incredible. I go to other ticket sites, and they seem just astronomical. How could I ever afford this? But Game Time is here for the Big 12 title and even the World Cup. That's right. The World Cup's coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. 48 teams for the first time ever. It's going to be massive, and you can go watch the World Cup. See the United States, I hope, with Game Time. Track price drops in real time. Get alerts when great seats open and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. Pull up the app, see the layout. It makes it so simple to scroll through matchups and compare seat views. Pick a game, tap a section, and have your tickets locked within minutes. No confusion, no hunting for fine print. Take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets or Big 12 championship tickets, any of these tickets, every match, every concert, every event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Game Time. Go to Game Time. Do it today. Download that app. Texas Tech is going to blow out BYU. Like that's a statement that no one in the country would argue with right now. While I don't believe it, and I think this will be a very competitive football game, and I love the respect on both sides. I love the way that BYU respects Texas Tech. I love the head coaches that respect one another, the fan bases that have a love and respect for one another, which is very interesting and odd to see in the Big 12 title game, but it's the case right now in the Big 12 conference amongst BYU and Texas Tech. But if the statement is from anybody in the country, Texas Tech's going to blow out BYU, that's one that can be quantified, qualified, backed up pretty easily because we just saw it earlier this year. This is the best team in the Big 12. Texas Tech is the best team in the Big 12 conference. 29-7 was the final score that first time around. And you cannot argue. It is objective that Tech is number one in the league. Now, I do not think BYU is near as far down the line from Tech as most people believe. I do think that BYU has a real shot to be competitive in this game. I don't think that's a hot take whatsoever. But if you're looking for Texas Tech to win this game, if you're looking for reasons for them to win this game, those are pretty easy to give you. Texas Tech being in the Big 12 championship is a huge success for Joey McGuire. And this is further proof that it's a Tech team that, you know, it wasn't back against the wall, but it was put up or shut up. We're going to give you as much money as humanly possible. You either win or you're not our guy. This is an outstanding campaign for McGuire and company, and I think that Texas Tech has every opportunity. It's interesting, even as I say this, though. You go back to, did we get beat that bad? You ever see those tweets from Stats Award? It's got like the graph.
Yeah, because we're always on the good side of it. We're always like, yeah, you did. You should have won the game, Florida State. What are you doing here? Yeah,
right.
I'm familiar.
So Texas Tech actually that week was only a 0.4 plus, a net rate plus above BYU, which was one of the lowest in the country of teams that won their games. So it was much closer on paper analytically than you would have expected. But I don't think that changes the fact that Texas Tech, A, obviously deserves to be here, and B, should win this game.
What went right for Texas Tech and what went wrong for Texas Tech that they need to improve on from that first matchup?
Yeah, what went right was their defensive efficiency. incredible defense against the run. Every run play that BYU threw at them, Tech was ready for. They had sniffed it out. They were going to defend Bear Bachmeier at a level that he had not seen before. They were going to defend LJ Martin, one of the Big 12's most prolific rushers, better than he had seen before. 10 carries, 35 yards in that game for LJ Martin. That's just not good. And then Texas Tech, it's weird. For as much pressure as it felt like they got on Bear Bachmeier, for as good as the D-line looked, and it did lead to a couple of turnovers here, they only sacked Bear once. So while the run defense was there, I think Tech can do an even better job. Obviously, you can do better than one sack. Can do an even better job in this game at getting pressure on the quarterback that equates to sacks, to bringing Bear Bachmeier down behind the line of scrimmage. Now, there were a few times he only got a yard or two try to run the football, but one sack feels small for what I assumed Texas Tech was going to do to BYU in that game. And then also, if we're looking at ways that Tech can improve, they did not. I mentioned this before, and I'll do it again. I'm not going to dilute the way that Texas Tech runs the ball, but there's a reason their analytics, their efficiency numbers are pretty low. It's because they have made their bed seemingly off of the chunk play on the ground. So again, Cameron Dickey, his 33-yard gain was his longest of the day. Jacoby Williams, 43-yard gain, his longest of the day. Put those together, that is 76 yards of offense on 2 rushing plays. Texas Tech had 149 rushes on 149 rush yards on the day. So 41 carries. You take half their rushing yards came on 41 carries. The other half came on 2 carries. That's where they can become more efficient in the run game when they score off against BYU again. I think that'll be a lot of the focus this week in practice.
Do you think that and from the BYU side, will they try to defend against that explosive play so much? Because it's almost like pick your poison, right? Do you want to continue to, from a down-to-down consistency and efficiency basis, take things away? And how do you change up just a little bit so you're not giving up those 2 explosives that ultimately end up being maybe the difference in you having a shot in the fourth quarter and you not, but also not sacrificing, the fact that down to down, you were pretty good against them against the rush.
No, this is for Texas Tech. We're going to wear you down. We're going to. I mean, my favorite early drive for Tech in that game against BYU was 5 minutes, 12 plays, 92 yards. They go down and score a touchdown. And listen to these: 6-yard pass, 6-yard run, 9-yard pass, 2-yard run, 5-yard run, negative 1-yard run, 37-yard pass, 8-yard, 1-yard, 5-yard, 5-yard, 9-yard. There's that one little chunk play mixed in the middle, but it wasn't that chunk play that ultimately buried BYU. It was Texas Tech's ability, even early in the game, to move the ball slowly down the field. So I do not think, and keep in mind, the next drive, BYU has the ball for 5 minutes and misses a field goal. They make that field goal, it's 10-3. We've got a much different ball game. But then Tech goes on their next drive, 8 plays, 59 yards and a field goal. They just had this way about them early in the game of holding on to the ball. What happens in the second half is BYU gets worn down. That's where the Tech chunk plays come from. That's where it feels a little more like Texas Tech can establish the run because they're rushing the ball for, there was a 33-yard carry. There was a 43-yard carry. And that's where Tech began to turn BYU over, either turnover on downs, fumbles, interceptions, and it just became chaos for the Cougars. They were playing from behind. It was only 13-0 at halftime. They forced a punt on Texas Tech's first drive. You didn't have to freak out, but BYU freaked out a little bit. They couldn't figure it out. So I don't think that the emphasis this week for Kalani Sitake and Jay Hill is to limit the chunk plays. It's more so, hey, if we get down by 10 points, which there's a likelihood that we do, don't freak out. This has happened before to BYU. They're prone to getting down early.
Yeah, they showed a good resiliency to come back this week on the road after being down 14-0, and they went on that big run that we talked about. I asked you this on the other side too, so I'll ask it. Is there an X factor? Is there a player? Is there a matchup in this game from the Texas Tech side that maybe intrigues you more than others?
Yeah, I do. I don't ever want to correct you because you're right about almost everything. But BYU was at home this week, which just makes it even grosser. That 14.
Oh, you are right. Yeah,
which is even more gross, right? I knew they were in the comment section just typing away right there. I wanted to save you. But it makes the 14-0 seem a little bit more like ooh. But
what are you doing?
Obviously they came back to 41 straight or whatever it was to blow out UCF. And look, that's where I think we're going to look up matchup advantages, and ways that this game will unfold. I think for BYU, it's hard to say we are better than Texas Tech at this position. A more mobile quarterback is maybe the most, prolific way you could use that example, but Bachmeier had less than 15 rushing yards the first time these two teams squared off. So I struggle to look at BYU and say matchup advantage, but I do look at BYU and say, hey, the thing that I like about this is you have come from behind in a lot of games this season. Maybe you won't freak out your second time around. Maybe you've got enough senior leadership to get down by 7 or 10 and still be able to be in the ball game. Then for Texas Tech, the matchup advantage in game one was Jacob Rodriguez versus the world. And he had an interception in that game, and he was just good old-fashioned Jacob Rodriguez. 14 total tackles, a tackle for loss, an interception. That's it. I mean, it's same old song and dance, broken record, no doubt, of like, oh, of course, they're going to bring up Jacob Rodriguez. You have to. How have we gone this long without? I mean, he deserves a shot at the Heisman Trophy, given his numbers are better than any defensive player we've seen the last 15 years in college football. Jacob Rodriguez is the matchup nightmare, and he wreaked havoc on BYU the first time around. I expect him to do that again.
I asked you this in the first one, and again, I'll get it. It's early in the week. I kind of like BYU to cover. I probably lean Texas Tech to win the game, but thoughts on how it'll go down or where you're leaning here on Monday?
Leaning right now at a Texas Tech victory. How could you not? They won 29-7. How could you not at least lean victory? I do not see blowout. I do not see cover. I don't see them winning by 14 points right now. I have a lot of respect for Kalani. I have a lot of respect for BYU. I think the Cougars keep it close, but Texas Tech wins this game by 3 or 6 points as we sit right now.